I'm back. It's like a new school term. It's September if you're listening to this episode 1 when I put it out. It's September 2025. It's season 10 of Man in the Mirror. And I'm your host, Hayden Williams. If you haven't listened before, Man in the Mirror is a podcast where each week I talk to a male guest and we discuss their life, their work. We get into self-care, self-image, and what the guest really thinks about the man that looks back at him in the mirror. I also have a rummage around his bathroom cabinet and find out about some of the products in his morning and evening routine, and maybe he passes on some tips and tricks along the way. Now, I had a bit of a break during the summer. It's a bit longer than I anticipated, actually, in the break between seasons. But I have been busy. I haven't just been idling away. I've been recording new episodes. And one of those episodes I recorded back in July 2025 with Renaud Salmon, who's the Chief Creative Officer at Amouage. And I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the House of Amouage. If you're not, it's from the Sultanate of Oman, founded in 1983. And originally it was known as the gift of kings because the fragrances weren't sold, they were literally gifted. It's all about that fusion of East meets West, opulent ingredients, beautiful, beautiful products that look gorgeous. And I suppose particularly well known for frankincense, which is one of the native ingredients and raw materials from the Kingdom of Oman. It's now available in over 100 countries, and there's over 18 standalone boutiques in Oman, in the UAE, the US, China and Malaysia, and many other places. Now, I met Renaud, who was over in London to introduce the audience at Harrods to the brand new fragrance Reception, which is part of the Essences collection. Renaud was in London to do a Meet the Perfumer event at Harrods and kindly made some time to chat to me. The fragrance was, he worked on with perfumer Pierre Negrin, who, if you're a keen listener of Man in the Mirror, you may know was a former guest. I interviewed him, a few seasons ago now, I think, and we did a live chat at the Liberty store. So Pierre Negrin worked on Reception for the House of Amouage. Yeah, I found Renaud to be fascinating. I think this Chief Creative Officer's artistic director role, I suppose, I mean, he sits across everything that the brand does, all the different touch points. And I think you probably would have noticed in the last few years a real uptick in the brand's presence, I suppose. And I'm thinking particularly of the UK. But yeah, we just seem to be seeing the brand a lot more. And we talk in the podcast about the Amouage facility in Oman, the fact that they actually create everything there, all the bottling, all the ingredients. Yeah, a really interesting conversation, a very thoughtful guest, and I know you're really going to enjoy this. So it's Renaud Salmon talking to me, Hayden Williams, and Renaud is the Chief Creative Officer at Amouage. And here we are having a chat on Man in the Mirror. Let's go. Welcome along to Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden here. And I'm downstairs in the Harrods building in central London. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Renaud Salmon, who is the Chief Creative Officer at Amouage. Hi, Renaud, how are you?
Good today, particularly well. Just flew in from Oman, from Muscat.
And you're feeling okay?
Oh, yes.
Amazing. So you're here today to talk about the Essences and in particular Reception, which is the brand new fragrance. And I believe you're doing an event later and you're here in London for a few different bits of promotion.
Yeah.
I guess first of all, for listeners who may not have had the chance to experience Reception yet, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about it.
So Reception, the idea of Reception was born, I would say, around 2 years ago, when we started talking with Harrods about the idea actually of creating a fragrance together. And you know that a few fragrances have been created referencing Harrods.
Yes.
And since the beginning, I was thinking, okay, I would like to try actually to create a fragrance that is not only about, like using the green color, using the name or something like that on whatever scent or something like that, but actually what could be a smell or a fragrance that would literally be the perfect reference to the substance of what Amouage is, but also what Arrots is. So it means trying to find actually a common ground between the philosophies of Arrots and Amouage.
Right.
So I went to the archives of Arrots. They have a building with like amazing archives.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they do. It's quite.
Is that in the store or somewhere?
No. It's actually a few minutes away by cab,
Yeah.
and they have someone actually who is the head of archives at Arrots, and this person knows everything of the, if I'm not wrong, 175 years of history of Arrots.
Goodness.
And obviously he has access to tons of dusty catalogs, books and so on of Arrots.
So where did you start? What were you looking for?
I mean, I was looking for inspiration.
Yeah.
So, you go randomly and you say, hey, listen, I'm trying to understand a little bit what makes Arrots special, the philosophy of it and so on. And I remember like he came out with a few old books and catalogs and pictures as well of the building of Arrots over the years and the decades. And something actually intrigued me. Like there were a few things, but one particularly, which was, they had like a tagline that said, if I'm not wrong, omnia ubiquus ubique, or something like that. Omnia ubique ubiquus, which means like the meaning was like everything for everyone, everywhere.
Right.
So that was like the philosophy of Arrots. And he explained to me, well, that was actually the original spirit.
So right back to the beginning.
Yeah, which is Arrots was created to curate the most interesting and tasteful assortment of relatively exotic curiosities from all around the world. So if you wanted to, like delight someone, if you wanted to surprise someone, if you wanted actually to host someone and so on, you would actually go to Arrots and you would find something.
They used to sell like you could buy wild animals and things like that.
I think you could find a lot of like very, very interesting things.
Yeah.
So, and I got intrigued by that because I felt, okay, there is something really interesting about that spirit of generosity of the assortment of Arrots that seemed to have always been there. And I realized also that from an iconography point of view and like from a visual point of view, that would translate into the visuals of the Horn of Plenty, so the cornucopia, which is,
right.
And actually, if you look carefully at the facade of the Arrots building, you can still see it. So there is a lady, actually two ladies, I think it's reflected, two ladies holding this kind of Horn of Plenty, full of like exotic fruits and so on.
Right.
And I was like, listen, this is really interesting because the iconography of it, the idea of abundance, the idea of generosity is something that obviously is deeply part of the history of Arrots, but is also what I see every day at Amouage and in Oman. Like you cannot go anywhere in Oman without people offering you an Omani coffee, some dates, rose water and so on, because this is actually the spirit of Oman. Being a host in Oman is a gift, is a privilege, and people would make sure that they try to host you the best way possible. So the story was there, the inspiration was there. Hence the name Reception. So really like the idea actually of welcoming people, and the idea of hospitality, abundance, generosity. How do you turn that into a fragrance? Well, that was obviously the next step.
Yes. So you got the chance to work with Pierre Negrin on this one, I believe.
Yes, I love Pierre.
Yeah, he's also been a former guest on the podcast. And what a lovely guy and a very thoughtful perfumer, I think.
So indeed, like I wanted to ask you actually, like how you felt about him, like what you think based on the interviews you had with different perfumers and so on, what stood out according to you when it comes to Pierre?
I think we had it was a very interesting live conversation actually at Liberty. And it definitely struck me that he was very thoughtful, probably more philosophical, and was interested in not just perfumery itself, but also a sort of wider lens on art and creativity. And I think the fact that now he's been doing it for such a long time, he brings all of that experience from, working with, obviously, with Amouage and so many different brands, but had a real wisdom about him, and the audience in the Liberty store were captivated, I think, because he's very softly spoken, not particularly effusive, and he doesn't speak in he doesn't get overexcited, but actually, the things he was saying about his approach to perfumery and life itself, I found him really, really interesting. And he had lots of good things to say about working on Interlude and Man, obviously, for Amouage before. So I'm not surprised that you've gone back to him for this one.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. I think his personality contrasts with the style of his creations. He's, as you said, he's soft-spoken. His creations are not.
They're quite big.
Yeah. So that's one thing with Pierre. The second one is, I think he's someone very authentic.
Yes.
Very authentic.
Yeah.
He speaks very transparently, in a soft way, but what he says is actually, quite transparent and genuine. And I felt I needed someone who, first of all, would be able actually to come up with a bold creation, that because you need that in order to convey the idea of richness, generosity, and so on. I needed that. I needed something authentic as well, because I wanted actually whoever, would smell a reception to really enjoy the authentic aspect of hospitality that I wanted to convey. And I think from that point of view, Pierre was definitely the obvious, I would say.
And this is the thing I always find eternally fascinating about talking to both, whether it's brand founders or creative directors and then perfumers, is, you mentioned the research piece and going deep into the Harrods archives. And then I guess you come up with some ideas and, mood boards and a brief. But then the fascinating piece is, how does that turn into something tangible and real that people can buy in a store? And how does a perfumer interpret your ideas and work collaboratively? And I think it's, you talked before about relationships and the importance of having that connection with perfumers. But that piece in the middle where it goes from an idea to different tests and mods and stuff is fascinating. I love it. And and he's done such a beautiful job. I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of we don't have to talk, endlessly about the notes, because I think it's definitely a fragrance to experience. But how did Pierre interpret your ideas into a fragrance?
So the way he brought it to life, I think was quite facilitated by, I would say, the richness of the story of Harrods. How Harrods started sourcing tea, coffee, different spices, exotic elements from around the world, and so on.
And that would have been when those things were exotic and scarce in the UK, wasn't it? They were pioneers.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I think, he decided to do something quite complex, and a fragrance that, in my mind, I don't know if he did it intuitively or not, but something that in my mind can be experienced the same way you would experience actually, being invited to the house of someone in Oman. So
really?
You would be greeted with coffee most of the time, which is really interesting because where I come from, coffee ends actually,
Me too.
The dinner.
It's the end of the meal, isn't it?
Yeah, but actually...
I didn't know that about Oman, actually, at the beginning, as a greeting.
Yes. So you could totally be actually offered rose water and coffee.
Is it, I'm sorry, to get into the reeds with it, black coffee? Or?
No, it would be Arabic coffee. So it's roasted coffee that comes actually together with cardamom, rose water, a touch of saffron, and you could get other spices and elements. But it in my opinion, Omani coffee has a taste, I would say, between coffee and tea.
Right. Is it sweet?
It's not sweet, but imagine the taste of karak tea without the sweetness of it, blended with I would say, relatively diluted coffee. So something like an Americano. And you would get probably a good description of what Omani coffee smells like and tastes like. So the fragrance actually opens with what I believe, but you might agree or disagree with that, but with quite a prominent note of coffee.
Yeah, it does. I can definitely, that comes loud and clear to me with some lemon in there too.
Correct.
And yeah, little sort of cut through.
So you don't want the opening to be too dark. So you have some lemon notes. You have also some pine notes to bring a bit of, I would say, slightly resinous woodiness to the fragrance. And for me, this is like the welcome of the, actually, of that exquisite meal in Oman. Then you actually move into the more, I would say, the spicy heart of the fragrance. Spicy, slightly green as well. There are some green aspects to it. So you would get things like maybe some coriander accents. You would get different types of spices as well. And then you move into more, I would say, the authentic heart of the fragrance. That's when you get the woody notes. That's when you get some frankincense as well and so on. Obviously, our signature Ojari frankincense in the heart of the fragrance.
Yeah.
And then you want the dinner to end a little bit, I would not say on a sweet note, but on a warm note, like a warm goodbye. So this is when you would have typically vanilla, this touch of cypriol as well that gives this kind of deep woodiness. Like, it's not oud, but it brings a little bit in that territory. And musks as well to create this very, very like nice, comforting, long-lasting patina.
And that's where I am now with I sprayed this a couple of hours ago and it's developed so beautifully. And as you say, it has the Amouage DNA of incense and warmth and spice. And there's a complexity, but I think it's beautiful. And I think sometimes with fragrances, as a writer and you get lots of press releases, what I love about Amouage is it feels like the story and the narrative is properly threaded through with the end result and what I smell. Sometimes it can feel like the story is bolted on and feels very separate from what you experience. Yeah. But as you explain the story of Harrods and coffee and the Omani welcome, that makes total sense to me. And it's one of those cases where the more you hear about the narrative, actually it adds to the experience.
Yeah, and that's important to me. And thank you for mentioning that, because obviously the smell is the most important thing. Like in the end, it's what people wear. Like people don't project a story. They wear a fragrance.
They still got to smell
fragrance.
Yeah.
However, when it comes to the creative process, the story is first. Yeah. The story is first. Because fragrances need to have a reason actually to exist in the portfolio of Amouage fragrances, and in this case also in the context of art. So the story is first. The story needs to be very defined and clear in my mind. And then the fragrance needs to convey that story very clearly. It does not mean that it does not always mean that the fragrance actually is, how would you say, is cut actually to match and to replicate exactly the story. However, it needs to be a perfect fit, because then I think we get to the point where it just, for me, it feels very easy to explain the story of the fragrance, because my fragrance is my story. So
and it's real. You're not having to conjure it out of thin air or something.
Totally. And I think it helps also the perfumer to try to convey like what I'm after in terms of feeling and sensitivity. So yeah, I'm very, very happy to be given carte blanche from that point of view at Amouage.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think, as you say, but then once it's given over to the wearer, we can interpret it how we want and place our own stories on top of it. But I think when there's that solid foundation that gives you a way of credibly explaining it, then it really helps.
Exactly.
And I've mentioned to you before, I was lucky enough to speak to Julien and Paul about the essences before. And we had a quick chat about this double infusion idea. And so reception makes up part of the Essences collection.
Yes.
So it also is included in this double infusion process. So as you're here, and I guess this is your brainchild, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that from your point of view. And I suppose, crucially, what it brings, again, in the same spirit of sometimes these things can just sound like a marketing ploy. Actually, what does that do for the fragrance itself, and why is that important for the wearer?
Yeah. So what we could do, a few things. I know it's a podcast, but I brought actually a before and after.
Oh, did you?
Infusion. Small disclaimer, it's actually for Outlands in this case, because but my samples were not ready yet for reception. But I think this is the best thing to do is just to smell.
Yeah.
So we could do that. And actually, let me as I speak, I'm going to we are going to smell the before and after of Outlands.
This is the first time we've done this on the podcast.
Good.
A live sniff along. I love it.
So we smell. So this would be actually Outlands.
Thank you.
So one of the essences.
Is this before?
Before. Okay. So beautiful fragrance. Beautiful fragrance. You might fully recognize Outlands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get like those lemony notes.
Yeah.
You get like the
it's a bit boozy, isn't it?
Yeah. Slightly boozy, resinous.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is like a fragrance that has become actually quite I would say quite a signature of like the Essences collection.
Has it? It's done really well.
Yes. Like people, I think, really appreciate that one. Now I'm going to give you so the second one, and I will just so
for those, so that Renaud is just popping the blotters into the little sample he has.
Exactly. So more or less the same amount. Okay. So
it's very scientific.
When I say after infusion, so we are talking about 6 months.
6 months later.
Of double infusion. Why double infusion? Because on the one hand, we infuse the ethanol that we use in the fragrance. So 70% of the total fragrance is alcohol infused in oak-wood barrel for a total of 6 months, which gives actually a very beautiful woody patina to the ethanol. And then the 30% of oil that we have in the fragrance, so what we call the concentrate, is actually infused with sandalwood chips, 5% of sandalwood chips for another 6 months separately. Then everything is blended together. So now we get the chance to smell the two of them.
But I think immediately to me, it feels like there's much more. There's a projection and outreach, and there's almost as though there's more sort of space between some of the notes.
So there are a few things happening. So one is like the technical qualities of the fragrance.
Yeah.
That you would get with a normal, proper aging process. You would increase the long lastingness. You would increase the diffusion and so on. Now what you get as well is a change in the character of the fragrance. You mentioned, something boozy about it. I mean, this gets bigger actually with the infusion. There is something like the citrusy aspect of the fragrance is changing from something that feels still like a little bit fizzy and acidic to something that gets much more like a candied lemon jam and so on. The fragrance feels much more chocolatey as well. And that comes most likely from the patchouli. There is a big amount of patchouli.
That seems to come up in the mix, doesn't it?
Yes, and obviously it's much more woody as well and round, and it just feels also smoother but bigger at the same time.
Almost there's like a kind of widescreen panoramic sense to it,
So it's the same fragrance.
Yeah.
It's the same fragrance, but it's different. And
that's the best way to prove it, I think.
I really wanted to bring those with me today because a few people mentioned is it marketing? Is it actually really happening and so on? I mean, all I can say is the following. Like we tried this for the first time last year. I would say as an experiment. Like, let's try.
So it wasn't necessarily going to turn into a commercial product.
We tried. We realized very quickly, okay, it seems that there is something happening. And today, it's not only me, it's like a full company. And by now, our clients as well, like understanding the potential of the approach. it feels like, we are able to achieve, I would say, aesthetic aspects of fragrances that we could not get just by like adding ingredients and so on. The behavior is very different.
So do you think this will inform how you go about fragrances going forward? This might feature a lot more regularly.
I mean, I at least in like for a specific type of fragrances, and if we go back to reception, like I felt intuitively, based actually on the first 3 fragrances that we created, that I felt that reception would be the ideal candidate.
It would benefit from this.
For that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it seems quite logical, no? Like you intuitively understand that, like the ambery and vanillic aspects and so on became actually bigger. The woody facets became more complex. Some of the harsher notes get a bit rounded, so that Arabic coffee note that we have actually in reception gets smoother with time, which is good because you don't want something that feels too acidic and too hard,
abrasive.
So it feels by now, it feels that fragrances that are quite big, quite packed actually with natural ingredients benefit a lot from aging. Yeah. And particularly from that double infusion process.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a really fascinating way to explain that. I didn't quite expect we'd have a sniff along on Man in the Mirror. Now, something I like to ask all the guests on the podcast is about their morning and evening routines, really just to get a sense of sort of products you use and what your idea of self-care is. So I wonder with you, Renaud, are there certain products that you're loyal to in your morning and evening routine that you'd care to share?
Yes, happy to do so because, first of all, I come from Belgium.
Yep.
I have freckles. I have a very white skin.
Yes. And you're in a very hot country now.
Exactly. I think I live in the worst country for my skin.
Yeah.
And I love the outdoors on top of that. So
you like walking and cycling. You're a real outdoors guy.
Yeah. So I love hiking in the mountains and so on. So a product that I'm using every single day is a proper SPF protection. It seems very basic.
No, but it's amazing how many men don't have it as part of their routine, which,
Totally. And in Oman, if you want to go outside, it's needed. Now, the thing I hate about SPF is the feeling that that those creams actually give you like a feeling that like your skin is not breathing properly.
Yeah, it's blocking pores and things. Which one do you like?
So I during one of my trips actually to Korea, I discovered a brand called Solwazu, and they have actually a beautiful SPF 50 milk, like face milk. That it's quite scary actually how it works because you have the feeling that you're not protected because it's so milky.
It's really thin and milky. Yeah. It goes on easily.
Yeah. However, it works like very, very well.
And doesn't make your face greasy.
No. And I had like issues with like like skin pigmentation and so on due to the sun. And I feel like it's getting better. So for me, that's a very important one. And then the more I age now, I'm over 40, so I start actually caring more about the aging of my skin and so on. So I started using like anti-aging products and so on a regular basis, particularly at night.
So moisturizers.
Like moisturizers, serums, and a good like rich night cream.
Is there a brand that you like, or have you tried the different things?
Yeah, I've tried. I quite like the texture of Augustinus Bader products.
They're good, aren't they?
I like a brand actually from Switzerland called Dr. Levy Switzerland.
Okay,
great products.
They're good.
Very, very good products. Very serious, at the edge of, I would say, like luxury skincare products and
more medical. Yeah.
Which I like also because they are not scented, like unscented products. And as I wear fragrances and as I work actually with fragrances and so on, I think the last thing I want is to have like my product interacting with my sense of smell.
Yeah.
Like regularly, I avoided actually putting like creams around my nose and so on because I could feel them most of the time. I could smell them.
Yeah.
So that's quite important to me as well.
And in terms of shaving, do you tend to keep a stubble?
Yeah. I don't have much facial hair, so I mean, unfortunately, I could not grow like something, like very.
You couldn't do a full beard?
No, don't think so. So it's always like trimmed, like halfway, and
And you use sort of beard trimmers?
Yes,
yeah,
that's all.
Yeah,
very simple. But I mean, I love going to the barber in Oman and so on.
Do you? I bet that's a nice experience.
It's a nice experience, but it's.
So they do flame your ears and things like that.
I've not seen that, but I think they're just like, they pay a lot of attention. Like when I go to like cut my hair, they take like a full hour actually to cut my hair, which is like they take their time. They're very proud, and there's always something that fascinates me. The barber would never let me go out of the salon without styling the hair. Even if I tell him like, hey, listen, I'm going to bed. It's 10 p.m. I am last appointment and so on. I tell him, listen, just like wash it and then you don't need to style it and so on.
He won't do that.
Like, you're my actually business card.
There's a pride in that, isn't there? Yeah.
So they would like go the extra mile, and it's quite refreshing from that point of view.
And I always find that time of spending with a barber or a hairdresser or whatever, I really cherish that. It's an hour where either you're having conversation or even if it could just be a bit more meditative. It's really special. I like that.
Well, I fall asleep at the end because my days are like constantly, running from one meeting to the other and so on. I happen to fall asleep at the other, so. And he needs to tell me, hey, like,
Renaud, go home.
Wake up.
It's 10 o'clock.
Like you were falling asleep as I was cutting your hair. So yeah.
And in terms of fragrance, obviously, we could talk for hours about fragrances that you love, but I wonder your approach to it in terms of work. Do you tend to, if you're leaving your house in the morning, do you have no fragrance because you need to be testing mods and things like that? So you stay away from
exactly.
fragrance,
So I pay attention to. It's quite important. So I pay attention to things like even laundry products and so on. I try
not too scented.
Yeah. Like I have the feeling that particularly these days, fabric softeners have become so potent. I'm regularly bothered by the smell of the fabric softener that I might use and so on.
Is there a different scent profile to? It's a kind of random question, but obviously these things are cultural and specific. So laundry products in the Middle East and in Oman, do they have different kind of smells to them?
Oh yeah, you would find like literally oud, fabric softeners and so on. Yeah, oud,
which could be quite big.
Yeah, and full of like full of like amber woods and so on. So it has
completely different, isn't it?
Yeah, it has the tendency to be quite overwhelming.
Yeah. So you stay away from those.
So I stay away from that. Like, usually my rule is always like go for the ecological ones and so on. Like they might not be the ones that provide the greatest softness or something like that, but at least you get something from a smell point of view that is quite neutral and so on.
Yeah.
So I would pay attention to that. I would avoid like wearing any fragrance in the morning because typically what I would do, I would come to the office, I would go to my studio, I would evaluate the different fragrances I'm working on and so on, and then I would decide to wear one of them. And then
to road test it, see how it is on the skin.
During the day I would see how it evolves and so on, and at least because if I wake up and I wear a fragrance I love actually from Amouage, let's say for example Reflection 45, I love Reflection 45. If I wear it, it removes the possibility for me to test something.
Of course.
I would.
Yeah. So they tend to be quite long lasting, don't they?
Yeah. But there might be an exception, which is, it's something I realized working in the region. So working in Oman, I realized that actually some clients or even some perfumers would literally smell in environments or with tools actually that we would consider in let's say that a European perfumer would consider as polluted. So typically, if you evaluate a fragrance in let's say in Paris, for example, you would evaluate in a room that is ventilated.
Yes.
That does not have a smell.
Yeah.
nobody in their right mind would say, I'm going to evaluate in a room full of perfume.
Yeah.
However, in Oman or in Dubai and so on, it's very common practice.
Is that right?
So people would spray fragrances, people would smell different fragrances one after the other. I've even seen actually clients, and that's when it gets a bit worrying. I've seen clients spraying several fragrances on the same blotter.
Oh, really?
And I'm like, okay, this is weird. However, there is like a benefit to it to an extent, which is you would be left with what stands out.
Mm.
If you smell fragrances in a room full of smell, you would probably only smell and appreciate the ones that stand out.
Yeah.
So if you are after something extremely diffusive with, a personality that would stand out actually in a crowd of fragrances and so on, that might be the right thing to do.
Mm.
But if you are after nuances, if you are after something with a bit of subtlety and so on, I think you want to have quite a neutral environment.
Yeah, okay. I read something that you wrote a while ago that I thought was fascinating. You talked about the difference between the creative process and craftsmanship. Easy for me to say. And I guess maybe listeners will know this already, but within Oman and Amouage, you have the manufacturing facilities right where the office is and right where you're doing your work as creative director, which I think is a really interesting insight into how it works. And I'm sure in some of the luxury brands and many kinds of brands, those two pieces of it would sit quite separately. But I think it's informative about the way Amouage works and you as the creative director, that you have the craftsmanship of the people creating the bottles and making the fragrances right where you and your team are doing your creative work. So do you see that having those two things together as creative director is a real benefit to you at Amouage?
I think it is, and I think it's a common misconception about, I would say art and craft that are often opposed. Particularly, I think in the mind of people, craftsmanship is about safeguarding the past. Mm. It's like, hey, we have this traditional craft and so on. We need to protect it. And from that point of view, it cannot change. It's something actually you fight against the change of that craft. Because usually craft has a tendency to disappear.
Yeah. So some people are looking backwards and trying to preserve something.
So, and by definition, if you come with that mindset, it means that anything that has to do with, I would say, artistic creativity and so on, has a tendency to be opposed to craftsmanship. Mm-hmm. And I fully disagree with that. I think, what we do at Amouage is actually the craft, the deep understanding of the craft. And we see it with the essences, but we see it with other things we've done. The deep understanding of the craft enables actually creativity. Mm. It really enables creativity because once you understand actually, how things are made, how things are assembled, how fragrances are aged and so on and all of that, all of a sudden you realize, wait, because there is a root there. Like, why are we not exploring that root? Yeah. That root is fully actually rooted in craft. Yeah. However, it's really innovative as well. And
you can see that, I guess, in the processes you've already talked about with the distillation. I mean, that was possible because your team is right there and you can have that quick feedback, and that's translated into something tangible and real that's now on the shelves here in Harrods.
Exactly. Like, take the word innovation in fragrances. When you talk to anyone, or like most people, about, okay, innovation in fragrances, what are the words that come to mind? AI, technology, and all of those things, right? Mm. Because like technology has become synonymous of innovation.
Yes. Yeah. And it seemed like there's only one path.
There is one path, which is like futuristic, modern, and so on and all. Yeah. What about craft as a way to innovate? Yeah. And I love that idea, like to say, hey, listen, like let's go deep down into, okay, like innovation does not mean making things with machine, with AI, with computers and all of that. I mean, innovating with your hands is one of the most beautiful things.
And we can see that even we're looking at the different bottles for the essences range here. And this is a different look for the Amouage bottles, and they're beautiful. I mean, they're slightly sort of matte and kind of a grey beige color. They're absolutely beautiful. And that's all done in-house as well, isn't it?
Totally. So, like every single Amouage product is handmade in Oman. And this is a decision we took a few years ago, actually, just before the pandemic. And it's a way for us to create a product that is hopefully physically different from anything else on the market.
They're absolutely stunning, aren't they?
I think it's important because, like, look at today, like, there are so many...
The dupes we're talking about.
Dupes, yes. The dupes is a big topic and so on. But the best way actually to avoid thinking about dupes is just like to try to create things that are extremely complex to replicate. And that's why, Amouage is investing actually so much into processes that create that genuinely create an added value that you could not just replicate by duping it. And the same for the bottles and so on. The more you invest in the bottle, the more you create, processes that trigger a lot of manual complexity and so on, the less I think you are exposed to easy dupes.
I think it's smart. And I think, we look at the bottle here for reception, there's a coin that's in the base of the bottle, and it's almost a way of watermarking, I suppose. It's unique to this range, and as you say, so much more difficult to replicate. I'm sure that there's perfectly good reasons, even in just the aesthetics and creating something that's beautiful to match the juice that goes inside. But if the byproduct is this is more difficult to replicate, that's got to be
the original intention was like, if I look at any perfume bottle, the base of the bottle, the bottom of the bottle is usually the ugliest part of the bottle.
And that's where you can normally have all the ingredients and the stickers and
all of that. And I felt, we are talking expensive luxury products. At that level, clients would be right to expect that every single detail of the product actually has been designed accordingly. And that's why I felt, let me look at luxury actually goods that are designed from A to Z. And what
everything's been thought about.
Watches came to mind because I was looking at like collection of watches and so on, and I realized, listen, the back of those watches are as beautiful as the front. So let's look into that. And this is where
it's an interesting way of thinking about it.
And then it's an additional element of storytelling. You took the bottle of reception, the medal at the base, the coin at the base of the product actually features this design of the Horn of Plenty. I don't know if you noticed, but this is actually where the inspiration comes from.
A full circle.
Yep. And I just, that's what I love about Amouage. Like Amouage has a lot of complexity to it, but you don't need to, not everything needs to be explained.
Yeah. It's there if you want to discover it. Yeah. So Renaud, the name of the podcast is Man in the Mirror. So I'd love to know what you think about when you're getting ready in the morning or heading off to bed in the evening and you take a glance in your bathroom cabinet or the mirror. What do you feel about the man that looks back at you?
That's a good one.
It's a big one.
Yeah, I see myself aging for sure.
Can't really stop that, can we?
Well, and I've been thinking, I'm working currently on a concept that I call the last garden, which is actually the
lost garden.
The last.
Oh, last.
So imagine that your life is full of gardens.
Yeah. And
those gardens are full of flowers. And progressively, as you age, some of those gardens disappear. And what happens to the last garden, the beauty of it. And what I want to express with this idea, this concept that might, become a fragrance at some point or not, is the idea actually that the process of aging can be both painful and rewarding at the same time. And I think that's what I'm experiencing. Like on the one hand, I'm like, okay, this is actually beautiful because X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's quite painful as well. So like the idea of aging being dignified and painful at the same time is something that I feel I experience.
It can be both those things, yeah, totally. And finally, Renaud, I like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast, what is it, perhaps outside of the workplace, what is it that brings you happiness and joy?
I think the idea that I experience every day to the fullest.
Right.
That's
I love
it.
that.
Like, my parents passed away at a very relatively young age.
Right.
So quite quickly I got this need to actually live life to the fullest.
Yeah.
And that brings me satisfaction every day when I actually, at the end of the day, I'm like, listen, like, that was an amazing day. I mean, most of the time creating for Amouage, running from like one place to the other, one meeting to the other, collaborating with amazing people. Like, it brings me so much joy actually to have the opportunity to meet amazing people around the world.
Yeah.
Thanks to my job.
It goes back to that idea of being able to look in the mirror and look at yourself and feel satisfied with the job you've done in that day and feel like it's been rewarding.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Renaud, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you and find out a bit more about you and all the great things that are going on with Amouage. And I hope you have a good event tonight at Harrods with reception. A real pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
It was my pleasure as well. Thank you. And hopefully we can meet again in a few months or years and have a catch up about
have a coffee. Thank you.
Thank you.
My thanks to Renaud. I love that conversation. Really enjoyed talking to him. A conversation we had in mid-July 2025 down in the basement in Harrods. Yeah, you may remember as well, I forgot to say at the beginning that I had Paul Galland and Julien Rasquinet on last season, who were also talking about the essences, but from a perfumer perspective. So it was really interesting to get that overall artistic direction, creative officer role and to understand more about that from Renaud's perspective. Yeah, I have to say, really impressed with what's going on and the output from Amouage at the moment. The essences I really love, and this reception one is particularly good. And I think sometimes, at the moment, it feels like in the industry, we're hearing a lot about price escalation and is it justified, and are some of the luxury houses just putting their prices up to have this perception of luxury? I mean, that's not the impression I get with Amouage at all. I think you can hear in that conversation there's genuine innovation happening, talking about things like the double infusion, which may, as we discussed, might be seen as a sort of marketing ploy, but it isn't at all. And I got to smell the before and afters, and there's genuine innovation and boundary pushing going on there, and it's what ends up in the bottle. It's not just marketing. And look, the fragrances, there's no getting away from the fact that the fragrances are not cheap. But I think if you love perfumery and you're interested in it, then I think there's an argument to make about justifying the price of something like Amouage, because the bottles are beautiful and the juice itself is very, very high quality. So as always, let me know what you think. What did you think of that conversation and what did you take from it? Please drop me a line on Instagram. It'd be great to hear from you. If you want to find out more about Amouage, and why wouldn't you, you can find them on Instagram at Amouage Official. And that's Amouage is spelled Amouage Official. That's Amouage Official. The website is amouage.com. If you want to find out what Renaud in particular is up to, he is also on Instagram at Renaud Salmon, which is RenaudSalmon. That's at Renaud Salmon. And if you want to find out more about Man in the Mirror, you can find me on Instagram at Man in the Mirror Pod. I'm also on TikTok at You Smell Great, What Is It? That's You Smell Great, What Is It? All one word. And I also have an Instagram account with that name, which is a bit more fragrance related, I suppose. So, please find me on those channels. And if you did enjoy the content, you'll have noted that there's no adverts in Man in the Mirror, but I do have a coffee account, so you can buy me a coffee. Haha. It's at coffee.com, and it's coffee spelt in a different way. It's ko-fi. And my account is ko-fi.com/man in the mirror. And if you go there, you can see that there's a space where you can donate. And being honest, that would go towards the running costs of the podcast, which are my editor and uploading to the various services. So it would be hugely appreciated. No pressure, of course. I do this regardless, and I do it because I love it. And I get to meet fascinating people like Renaud. But look, anything you could do would be very much appreciated. So with that said, look, let's leave it for today. That was Renaud Salmon. Thank you to Renaud. Thank you to you, as always, for listening. And I'll see you next time on Man in the Mirror. Until then, take care.